We're on, we're doing it. Okay. I am having a great chat in England. Is it Devonshire? Devon, where are you?
Somerset.
Somerset, so sorry.
Yeah.
In Somerset with composer clarinetist Helen Habershon. Uh, we're going to just call her Tunesmith from here on out in the conversation. I've never heard so many gorgeous tunes in my whole life. This CD we're going to be discussing is her most recent 2019 Divine Art release, Found in Winter. Is the title
Yeah.
of this CD. Uh, and all your own compositions with some orchestration help here and there from John Lenihan. We'll speak about all the people that helped you here. John Anderson, the oboist, is on this track. Andrew Fuller, cellist. Yeah, we
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
far. Yep. And John
Yeah.
Lenihan is the pianist as well. London Primavera Orchestra, conducted by Anthony Halstead and so on. So this is an orchestral chamber music sort of CD, and there are some chamber works, there's some orchestral works, string orchestra, and soloist clarinet. You are a clarinetist, marvelous professional musician, and we're going to talk a little bit about circumstances, how fate puts
Yeah.
people in certain positions
Uh,
to
yeah.
compose. For example, I think you know where I'm going to head with that one. Um, here are the pieces and titles on this CD of Helen's, and you need to, all of you out there who are watching, you need to get a kind of idea we have about where this composer, human being, naturalist is coming from. The pieces are Found in Winter, a suite, shall we say, a five movement suite, beautiful piece. Let me get the rest of the program up here. Um, the Bronze Horseman, based on the poem of Pushkin.
Yeah.
And there is another piece that involves poetry, that's based on some poetry. But the Bronze Horseman, Peace Before Time Began, Day of Judgment. So this kind of gives you the audience an idea of what there's a temperament going on in this CD. Um,
Definitely. Yeah.
and also we need to understand that Helen's father was a poet writer. May I say that?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
my one of my questions we're going to deal with here in a minute is how it is to live in a family of writers, because your music is narrative. Why don't we start right there? Here, your father. We're going to read one of his poems, by the way, because I think it nails you as a human being. It nails the whole process where you're coming from. I think. Um,
You're not the first person to say that, actually.
let's talk about your father.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. We're looking at him. I'm sorry, I'm just having a little trouble finding his name. I'm so sorry.
William Saunders.
Thank you, William Saunders. Go
Yeah.
ahead. What's the start? Let's start that in childhood. Living in, you know how envious most of us are to have anyone in our colleagues that lives in an artsy family, in an artistic family. Now maybe it's all a dream of mine, but tell me about life with your father, the writer poet.
It's really interesting. I think childhood certainly is no question. I mean, I'm not saying anything new here, but childhood does have a huge effect on, or what sort of childhood has a huge effect on how people are. My father had quite a troubled childhood because his parents divorced, and it was all very well. They didn't actually divorce, because in those days it wasn't really done.
Mm,
Um, so arguments. He had a really difficult time, and he just missed the war because he was too young to fight. But he always had a kind of guilt about that.
mm.
I don't really know
Interesting.
why. He just felt he was very lucky to not have to, and had a terrible ache in his heart about all the loss just before.
Mm,
Um, my mother was. She only died last year. She's an incredibly talented musician herself, and she could play by ear. And it's just one of my first memories is hearing her play the piano. And I remember going to the piano as a child and putting putting my fingers on it as little children do. And I was just quite surprised and rather disappointed that it didn't make the same kind of sounds as my mother could do. Yeah, I thought this piano thing was you just go and touch it, and suddenly this music comes out.
Is that what put you off piano and you went rushing to clarinet? What?
No, that's not. That's a kind of rather sad, rather boring story, really. But my mother wanted to be the pianist, so when we were doing really, really well, she I don't know, we just we were doing distinction for our grades, and suddenly we moved to Devon from near London, and suddenly the piano lessons just went. So, but I love the clarinet. Got
Yep.
to stay.
Dropped your watch.
I didn't quite know what that was. I think it was in rock. Anyway, yeah, the great thing about the clarinet is you don't, well, you know yourself, you don't have to do hours and hours of practice. I mean, you obviously do quite a lot when you're a student. I think the most I ever did was something like 4 hours, but that was when I'd had to learn a new piece and I'd had a lesson. So, but I mean, generally, there's only quite a week. You know, it's quite easy to. Obviously, you have to do the work. I'm not saying you don't, but you don't have to do what string players do. Apparently, is sort of 7 hours a day, plodding through all the scales and arpeggios, and you do that. But it's much easier. I mean, if you find it relatively. If you have a kind of gift, I suppose, that way, it's not that hard.
Point is well taken, and by the way, I want to let you feel as though we are kameraden in that when you moved, you got away from piano. When my family moved, I got away from piano. I took advantage of the opportunity and never took piano lessons again, so I'm a lousy pianist, which of course has haunted me all my life, you know.
The thing is, I've got back, I mean, I got back to it as soon as I could because I love it, and actually I would quite like to have been a pianist in some ways. Well, I would. I'd like to be able to rattle off all the Chopin pieces and, you know, that kind of thing. But I have got a lot better on the piano, and people say, why don't you perform your own pieces? Because I could perform some of them. Some of them are too hard for me, so I don't have the technique. But the piano is a wonderful sort of, it's like when you're a painter, you know, you have a mix of colours. I mean, I think it's the most wonderful way to compose is to be able to just play around with chords and, you know, tones, and I don't know, it's just wonderful.
You know, we got a little off the subject, but now we're on the subject. I want to stay there a little bit longer. I'd like to discuss an incident that you mentioned in your program notes about broken wrists.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's been slightly over dramatized actually.
Of course.
Media, but I mean, I did actually go to someone's drinks party in this hamlet we were in, just out of kind of, you know, I just thought we'd better go. And they just had blue algae all over the step. It's Christmas, you know, it's like Boxing Day or something. Yeah. And I went absolutely flying and bashed both my wrists and actually my coccyx, which was even worse. But I mean, it was really quite hard to have two wrists sort of in you know, plasters and things. And I couldn't play the clarinet for a couple of months. So, I mean, it's been called a serious injury. It wasn't really tragically serious, but it was kind of serious at the time, you know, just trying to function. But I was allowed to play the piano. So after a short time, and the physiotherapist said it was actually good. And that kind of helped me to gear into composition because I sort of got really into it. And then the composition started to come back. So, yeah.
And let's just make sure everybody understands who clarinetist, composer Helen Habershon is. Studied at the Royal College of Music. Correct me if I fall off here anywhere. With Sidney Fallon, I saw it jumped out at me. I'm as you know, I'm a clarinetist. Yeah. Did not want to be, so I went into conducting. Gervais de Paillet, I mean, one of the great clarinetists. I hope I'm pronouncing his name properly.
He was wonderful. They were both wonderful teachers in totally different ways. Sid Farr was an absolute legend. I mean, he was completely bonkers, which was great. You know.
Yes.
I mean, the only trouble is he wouldn't come in quite often, so I'd come all the way from Devon for a lesson, and Mr. Fell isn't in today, kind of thing. But really, when he did turn up, I learnt so much that it, you know, didn't really matter too much.
Somehow I'm seeing a man with his hair all askew, you know, that sort of absent-minded sort.
Well, I don't know whether I should say this because it's a little bit, but it was quite funny. I think I don't know whether he divorced his wife or something, but there was some story about him saying he had a gig and left his clarinets behind. So, yeah, he was a little absent-minded, let's put it that way. But he was an incredible inspiration and very, very deeply admired by many wonderful musicians.
So you have had obviously a major career. You can hear it in your playing. It's such a gorgeous quality of sound on clarinet on your instrument, all over the place. And then, an incident occurred. You were laid up for a couple months, and they started doodling at the piano, and that apparently, am I close? Kind of ignited something that had been
Yeah, well,
waiting in the back there.
absolutely, totally. And I mean, I had actually been to Brittany, and I was swimming in the sea, and I suddenly had this incredible feeling that it could be a million years ago. That feeling, being alone, sort of in nature, if you like. I'm quite a good swimmer. I was quite a long way out, relatively. And I looked around me and I just thought, I can't see anything but the sand and the sea and the sky. And then I thought, yeah, it could be a million years ago. And then I had a tune come in my head a million years ago, which then became my tune, which has been incredibly popular. And it's funny, it's really old. It feels like a very ancient tune, like really seriously ancient.
You know what? All of your music has something there of, I want to say, folk-ish quality to the tunes, and an ancientness somehow, if that makes any sense at all without insulting anybody.
No, it certainly doesn't. I feel very happy to hear that, because it's kind of, I don't know, my father was going back to my father, so I do jump from subject to subject, but I'm known for that.
So do I, and I'm known for that too.
Well, I was being called a butterfly by a few people, but no, he was a searcher, if you know what I mean by that. I mean, he was a searcher, so he was always looking for wisdom, but not in a sort of sick kind of way. I mean, he just naturally was searching, and I'm a sort of chip off the block, and that's exactly where I feel, I am.
And quite a naturalist, obviously. His interest in nature and so on. Yeah.
No. Sad about the way we're becoming so materialistic, just because he thought there was so much to lose on the way, as even Native Americans do. I mean, it's it's all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I would like to read one of your father's poems. I told you before we began, it's not because I want to show off or anything like that, but because, and we mentioned my favorite American poet is Mary Oliver, also. Just teaches me so much about the world around us, the living organism that we have, that is our planet, and all of the occupants of it, one minor part of which is human beings. I wish they'd get smart so we don't destroy the planet. But this is a poem by your father. Let me see if I can find it's The Old Spirit, right? The Old Spirit. William Saunders. Here we go. I'm going to give it a shot. And again, it's because it's not to waste time. It's because this poem, and you put it in your program notes, and to me, it speaks to who you are. Okay, your father's poem. I listen to the wind howling, wrapping itself around the chimney up there on top of our roof. The night closes in from far off. The stars make an effort to be seen between the racing low clouds. In the spaces between the hills, up there on the high moor, where only the crow, clinging to his dark, craggy perch, and the fox, looping along those age-old nocturnal tracks, live their lives fully. In that wilderness, the wild, mournful wind, the racing clouds, and the night's dark face revel in their comradeship, and together bring an old spirit back into our uneasy present times. Whew. Wow. And that is your music. What do you think?
I mean, totally. It's interesting because before my father died, I mean, he died about 10 years ago, there was a bit of a funny thing with my mother. She didn't, anyways, it's just, I'm sure all families have these weird
dysfunctions.
Yeah, dynamics, but and I tried to understand it, but my mother was very kind of guarded about who my father kind of spoke to. She was quite anyway, let's leave it at that. But basically, she didn't particularly like my success, and my twin sister, who's a wonderful flute player. She was always a bit put out that we did well, strangely, because she was the one who encouraged us so hugely when we were young. But anyway, they were staying with us, and my father said, Helen, I'd love to hear some of your compositions, because he knew I was just starting out doing it again, since being a child. So I played a little piece, kind of rather kind of nervously, because I felt embarrassed that I didn't think my mother would want me to. When I got to the end, my father said, I have a piece I think would go with that. And it was a beautiful little he didn't call them poems, but a little writing anyway, called After the Clouds Had Gone Away or something. I can't even think of it. And he said, could I read it with you? And so as I played it, he started reading his piece. And the weirdest thing of all was that we finished at exactly the same moment. And my lovely daughter-in-law at the time, actually she wasn't married to my son, Gina, said she was very emotional, and she said, you know, your music is your father's writing in music. You see what I mean? She felt that it was so linked, and it was just incredible. It was the first time we'd ever put the two things together, and it had that instant reaction from.
Well, I'm glad that I got it right. It just spoke to me immediately. Your concerns, but also, as I've said repeatedly, this CD is not about downer. It's about there's trouble, and everything ends in a very, very positive manner, I think. Anyway, in other words, you're very hopeful, which is quite refreshing.
Well, you might find this interesting that Anna Akhmatova, which is Requiem, that happened very similarly to Ron's Horseman, in that my daughter Emma was doing Russian at Exeter University, and I was interested in what she was being given to do with the Russian literature, and so I said, oh Ems, could I look at that? And so I read this poem Requiem with her. Of course she could read it in Russian. But anyway, I was so completely blown away by it, if you like. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It was just full of everything in there. But what I loved was this one line, and it said, hope was always hovering. I can't remember, something like, a few feet ahead. But there was like always hope hovering, just a little in front. And I thought, wow, that's unbelievable. And when I started writing this piece, which was originally for piano, and it was quite extraordinary, really, because I actually had shivers up I felt so emotional as I wrote that music. And I came to a bit where I wrote, I don't know if you came across it, but you must have done. Suddenly there are some rather wacky chords that are very discordant in the first bit.
Yes, yeah, and it's a very brief episode.
It's a very brief episode, and as I was writing it, because this is what I always do, when I'm writing, I feel totally that it's not my music. I feel that I'm very privileged to have gone into a space that I can access this inspiration, really. I think that's how to put it. And so I started writing these mad chords that were, and I thought, what the hell is this? But what I realised suddenly was, it obviously was part of the poem. It was a bit of the prison siren.
You mentioned that in the program note, yeah. I just thought of it as like visions of 1905, when the troops turn on the peasants and mow them down. Just the shock of a
real... Well, it's the same kind of thing. It's all the same ghastly sort of black.
This is the fourth part of Found in Water, just so people are clear.
Yes, yeah. So.
But for example, let's stay on Found in Water for a moment. The first movement, Winter Arrives, a lovely kind of a drone sort of beginning that sort of sets this, as do all of your pieces, they set this for kind of meditative, contemplative mood, I think. Far Out in the Ocean, featuring yourself on clarinet, and I remember in your program note you mentioning about this sense of distance and loss, and you described it earlier, going out swimming, and suddenly, there you are, there's nothing around you, just the open sea. And I swear I never understand how composers can do it, but somehow you create that sense. So your narrative is so pure, you in terms of the sounds that you associate and that you help others relate to. Does that make any sense?
It makes total sense. And the thing is, I know composers, and it's terrific what they do, but they sort of contrive what they're going to do. They plan it, and I don't do any of that at all, really. And I just literally, I don't know. I just think, right, let's go, and then something happens. And the other thing that's really strange is that titles come just the same way. Like, I don't think about the title. What shall I call it? It just suddenly comes straight into my head, and I write it at the top of the page, like. far out in the ocean. I didn't know where that came from. It just appeared from nowhere.
So you're
But
channeling.
there is something extraordinarily magical, I think, about an area of this planet that no humans can go to. It makes me feel incredibly emotional, and I've also experienced this in the mountains when I've been lucky enough to ski, and I've gone up, to the top of a mountain. You look across at another mountain range, and you can see very often, a little group of peaks that no one can go. But what it really gets me is when you see a little path, and you can see there is a path, and it kind of meanders a bit, and then it goes off to the left, say, and this is just magical and can't put it into words. But it's like so pure, isn't it? There's this little path that no one can go and trample or.
It's so not only is it so pure, it's so your father. I swear. I mean, I don't know how these things work on you. I'm not you, but we just finished reading a poem about little trails on the moor, the little ancient trails that the foxes have used from time immemorial. All that. I mean, it's just. Thank you for bringing that moment up in Requiem, because it's a shocker. That brief little moment tells you, something very serious is happening, and it's not, the piece is not really a literal narrative, it's an idea narrative. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's not literal. You're not defining literally events, but you're defining an idea.
Okay. I'd also like to just say, while we're on my subject, of my father, I do talk about him a lot because he was a major inspiration. Not his writing, actually, in that I didn't read his writing and then write some music, but I know there's a link. But he had this thing, that everyone has the power in them, and he one of his sadnesses was that so many people don't realise that they too can create. We are all, at the end of the day, we're all a creation in ourselves. I mean, that's why I feel that, say, talk about my mother. She was maybe difficult in some ways when I was younger or whatever. But I always feel you got to give someone space to change, if you see what I mean.
Not only that, there's always a complicated story. I myself have changed a lot about what I'm about to say, which is that it's taken me, as it does most of us, our lifetimes to begin to figure out things.
Yeah.
And I'm a creative person. I've been trying to figure out how come, why, where did it start, how come. And I'm now realizing it was my mom. My mother was the creative influence. She was in little amateur theater. She wrote. She was a writer. The Great Depression ruined all of that for her. But I see that now, in retrospect, so many years later, that she guided me. She saw something, and she guided me toward performances or toward concerts or whatnot, and was a little jealous also. When you mentioned that about your mom, if she had been a creative person, it must be hard to be a parent and have ambitions, and the ambitions are not achieved for one reason or another, but your children have creative ambitions that they achieve, and of course you're thrilled for them, but there must be a little something somewhere.
I mean, like just the whole thing of jealousy, if you go a bit deeper, you realise there's so many more layers to it than that, and I don't think I don't think one should stop at jealousy, because there's a deeper basis for it underneath.
Thank you. That's exactly right. Let's talk just for a second. I'm going to jump us back into the subject to hand here, but why don't you just run me by a little bit some of these wonderful musicians that you brought on board. John Anderson oboe. I'm going to run them by, and then you can just give us a just quick little. And the main thing I want to know about is, when did you meet them? How did they? Are they good friends? Are they bad friends? Do they come to dinner? Are they godparents? What? So we've got John Anderson oboe. Andrew Fuller, cellist, wonderful. John Lenihan, pianist, fabulous. And also the idea that he was there to kind of help you work some things out. You made it very clear to me that you orchestrated, but it's nice to have a collaborator to kind of chat through and do some other tweaks and twitches with it. I used the wrong word. I think we mentioned tweet.
No, I mean, okay, well, I'll start with John Lenihan. John Lenihan, my twin sister and I played a lot with him when we were young, when we were all at college, just after college, did a few TV things with him. And he is just an absolutely awesomely, I don't like to use that word too much, but He's just a wonderful musician, wonderful pianist, wonderful arranger, and he's one of the nicest people you could ever meet. So it's embarrassing. I hope this is. I've just realised this is going out to lots of people, but why not say it? And he's been amazing. I mean, in fact, I went to him. It was one of the first people I went to when I'd started composing seriously again. And I just said, I'd love your take on this, but it's coming through and I really want to share it. And so immediately, you know, he was so encouraging and just said, oh, this feels really pianistic writing. And so then we made the first CD in his house with a brilliant, I think it's called Simon Harum, saxophonist. But anyway, he was really great recording engineer as well. We did the entire album in one day. And there was one track called For Arena. It's another long story, but someone who hugely inspired me and believed in me, only for a couple of years, but she came into my life. She was actually a medium, and she kept telling me, you've got to get this music out, you've got to get this music out. And amazing, actually. But anyway, so we hadn't quite finished. He was helping me. I was playing clarinet with basically piano. I just suddenly could hear the melody on the top. And he was great, fantastic, helping me to get it down. And I just remember we hadn't even quite finished it, and we had about half an hour to go when we had to go, and we just managed to do it. And he had a brilliant idea of leaving the clarinet out for a section, which worked perfectly. So yeah, John's fantastic, and he was
creative collaboration is a good thing.
Yeah, he's also so sensitive about making sure that I'm happy with whatever we do, but yeah, fantastic.
Talk about lucky. Are you kidding? I don't hear a single draught of jealousy from John Lenihan. He's very helpful. Lenihan.
No,
excuse me.
we actually had it's quite funny how some musicians that's all fine, but you feel like they are very into the clapping part. My father used to have that. We had this big conversation when I was quite young. I was quite offended. He said, is it about when you do a concert, how important is the clapping? I said, it's not important at all. And he was saying, about the ego, and it did make me think. And I thought, actually, no. I mean, obviously, if no one claps, you wouldn't feel very good.
Yeah. There is purpose to having an audience respond to you. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, no, there's no. I don't detect any ego there.
How about John Anderson and Andrew Fuller? We're talking obocello.
Andrew Fuller is wonderful. I mean, I had never worked with him before, because in the CD before we used Alexander Bailey, who's someone I played with in the past as well. But wonderful musician, and I had also played with John Lenihan, I believe. So yeah. But he was great. He was. I loved his playing. It was perfect.
Yeah, and Andrew Fuller, beautiful.
Yeah, Andrew Fuller. Yeah, but John Anderson. There's another story there. I mean, he's. I've known him since college, and he is a legend. I mean, like when I was doing probably one of the biggest gigs I've ever done with my sister, we played a concerto with the New York Chamber Symphony Orchestra with Gerald Schwartz and Avery Fisher.
I knew him in Seattle when I was a young conductor in Seattle. Yep, lots of stories about Schwartz. Yep. Yeah. And in Los Angeles, he conducted the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra for many years as well.
Well, he seemed like a wonderful guy. And anyway, I'll never forget it. So we were playing, and then we got to the break, coffee time, and all that. And one of the principal oboe came over. He's obviously one of the best in the world himself. And he just said, "Say, sorry about the accent. Say, John Anderson?" And we said, yeah, and he plays in our wind quintet, and we played wind quintets and blah blah blah. And he said, "Man, he's a legend."
That was well done.
He couldn't believe that we were, he couldn't believe him. But he's a lovely guy. And one time we were late to do a concert because the driver didn't know the way. We were doing a concert in Wells Cathedral. And I'll never forget, John Anderson just told joke after joke and kept me really happy because I couldn't really worry because he told these nutty, mad, wonderful jokes. So yeah, and whenever we rehearse, we always catch up with anecdotes for probably more than half rehearsal, and then it's just with people that you play with a lot, you just don't have to do that much rehearsal really.
Yeah.
Just play it through and who's going to bring who in, and off, and
And by the way, that's
yeah,
the British way, as I recall. You know, conductors never know who's going to show up at a rehearsal. You know, the sub system is so advanced. You know, that it doesn't really matter. The bodies that
well,
sit down, as you know very well from your own performance experience, you come in, you play. That's it. I love it. Um, I guess what I'm wondering about is, you know, we've spoken about. To me, you are such a narrator. All of these pieces on the CD are so narrative, and they're so important. And I'm glad that you also in the program note are very clear in your narrative notes, so that you help us to understand. Excuse me. But I'm wondering, you know, I don't want to talk it to death, but I'm so curious about living in a kind of literary specific, if you will, environment of your father, whether your narrative, musical narrative propensity, you know what I'm getting at. I mean, I think we may have even touched on this already, but something about, you know, do you give him a little credit for creating your grand imagination that you project into music?
I would say definitely with the imagination, because I don't know quite how he did it, but he brought us all up, I feel, to be free spirits. I know that's a bit of a funny term, but I feel that he gave me the key to unlock the little box that we all feel we have to be in, and gave me a key to get out into the, you know, the eternal space, if you like. Sounds a bit mad, but I feel I don't have to think in a certain way. I mean, obviously we're all brainwashed to a point from the way we're, you know, it's necessary to have some order when we have children are young. You need to have a bit of discipline and all that. But I do feel that I can. I like, well, I wrote something about him when he died, actually, about the empty chair, and I said that the way he could think, he could go above and below the average, you know, the normal kind of conversation. He could think. I can't remember how I put it, but it was. I feel that he gave me the ability to see with a bigger perspective, or allow myself to, shall we say?
And the world of art is a world of the subconscious, is a world of subtext. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's also really a lot of really interesting sort of physics now, isn't there, about, you know, quantum physics, about how using your brain in a certain way changes your vibration. I mean, we all vibrate, don't we? And I think there's a lot in that. It's very hard for me to explain it, but yeah,
Well,
I'm not going to try.
let me jump in and put my foot possibly in my mouth. But when you meant about what I get from you, as I have said, perhaps ad nauseum, is a kind of eternal optimism. I mean, there is something. You're not a negative person at all, are you? I mean, because your music always ends with a spiritful optimism that humankind is going to save itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bigger. I think the problem is I think the problem is that we as a society have kind of not realised that nature is a nurturer, and I feel that when people, I mean, well, perhaps people wouldn't agree with this necessarily, but I think that if you remove yourself from nature and you are constantly surrounded by concrete and you know, you don't have that rustle, that sound of the rustle of the wind in the hedge, you lose some kind of healing, if you like. People do say my music's very healing. A lot of people say that, and it's used for, people use it in yoga and when they're doing art, all sorts of things like that. But I think it's a bit like taking the yolk out of an egg, you know, because we're like the human, we are actually very vulnerable without nature supporting
I was going to
us.
say carefully. You take the yolk out
Yeah.
of the egg carefully. We're vulnerable. Yeah.
Like, you know, I was sitting outside listening to some amazing birdsong a few months ago when it was particularly loud and wonderful. And I was thinking, I suddenly thought, it's not just wonderful to hear this birdsong. There's a lot more to it than that. It's actually kind of a nutrient in some kind of way. It's like aiding me. It's more than just hearing birdsong. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do indeed.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, and imagine this world without birdsong. I mean, imagine this world without beauty or music, or how dull would it be
Which
if
is
we were just,
exactly which is not only dull but dead.
yeah,
Of the soul at very least. And you and I both know in this time, we're in 2019, it's August, September, very terrible things are going on the planet, the Amazon, I'm thinking of in particular.
Yeah.
The utter wanton destruction of the Amazon, deliberate burning of the Amazon by a right-wing regime in order to make more money and more profit. So I mean, things can be very bleak. Uh,
Mm.
but somehow, in my view anyway, the planet always seems to survive.
Mm.
Sensibility comes to the fore. Go.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few talks on music and nature, and I collaborated with Jim McNeil, the Ice Warrior.
You
Um,
mentioned, yes, you mentioned that in your notes.
yeah, and that was really fantastic because we met completely randomly, very strange, and we both felt we'd met for a reason. And we did a talk on, how music and nature are intrinsically linked, and people found it really quite good, well, more than good, inspiring to have someone coming from, people from such different sides of the spectrum. So you've got, polar explorer and a composer. I'm actually his composer in residence, which I'm really, really chuffed about. And there is meant to be if he can get the funding which I believe he will be able to, he's leading this incredible expedition next year. I've been invited to
Nice.
go. I don't know whether that will happen.
Oh, please make it
But,
happen.
but
You know why. You know why. You need to do this.
you reckon?
Yep. If it
I,
happens, do it. We only live
yeah,
once, really.
yeah. Yeah, but we both, I feel that if we could get people, one of my dreams is to get many people from different, well, quite diverse backgrounds together. I think it'd be much more powerful than just say me writing piece about Wales or something and him recording the data. I think that if we could get a sort of wonderful circle of people from all different parts of life to come together and say, let's do something, let's really try to do something. I mean, all we can do is try, but if we don't try, we haven't even done that. So I think we've got to throw ourselves at it. I mean, I'm coming from an artistic point of view with my music, and that's why actually I was so thrilled that it went on Classic FM recently. It was been on, it's the Drive Discovery album of the week and all that, and on Alan Titchmarsh's show, because to actually have a big listenership is a start.
Yeah, absolutely. And
And,
I understand its popularity. This is what, your third CD? Is this your
yeah,
third? Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I haven't heard the preceding two, but I can just say, as I've said too many times perhaps, there is a sense of peace, frankly, about the
Mm.
CD. It's reassuring.
Well,
I,
I like to feel that actually, because it reflects nature in many ways. I feel, so if people can't actually be in nature and they can hear this music, it gives them hopefully that peace to reflect. And this is, I'd like to make this point actually, that I think that being able to reflect is a massively important part of every human being's existence, because it's in the time of reflection that you actually make your decisions and you learn. Um, you learn so much about you, and if you're constantly being entertained, like with the media, watching, looking at your phone. I mean, I've even found myself slightly addicted to my phone. I'm making a big effort now not to be, because it's just so easy to think, oh, I'll just check the weather, or I'll just see if that person's emailed me back, or just listen to my composition. It's just endless, and you just actually need to put it in another room,
and I think what
but not
you're talking about is quiet time. The planet,
quiet time.
if ever the planet, the humans on the planet, the animals know about this,
Well, I know.
really. But humans need quiet time, or we're gonna
Mm,
do bad things. I mean, it's
mm,
just what I sense is human beings are just so caught up in nonsense and craziness and circle
mm.
movement. They're not. Everybody needs to sit down and be quiet and meditate and have some clean, clear thoughts. And we'll get there.
No, well, I think we will, because there's a limit to how fast someone can
Yeah.
run and run and run and run and run, isn't
Yeah.
there? I
Yeah.
mean, at the end, you sort of run out of breath.
Either that, or and also in terms of the situation the planet is in at the moment, it's a great test of humankind. Are we
Mm,
worthy
mm,
of saving
mm.
the planet? Are we worthy, or are we just idiots? And maybe it's okay for humans to disappear. Oh, that was
Well,
terribly negative. Let's get back. let's get back to the
I
to
started writing. I
to
started
found,
writing.
found.
I
What have
started
I?
writing
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say I started writing a little play. I've sort of started writing a few stories. I'm actually writing a musical as well, but that's
Your
quite a big
your
thing.
your dad is looking down and going, ah, yes.
No, and I know. We actually talked about the musical, and it was all about. I had a dream, and
Mm.
actually had a dream about a sort of scenario, and a rainbow came into it, and I got very hung up on this rainbow for a long time. My father said, "Maybe you should ditch the rainbow," and I said, "No, no, you don't understand. It's really important." So in the end, I started looking at rainbows in desperation. Like, why is this flipping rainbow coming? And then I got to the importance of rainbows all around the world and all around the different cultures,
Cultures,
and
yeah.
a massive, massive thing. And then I got
You know what ours is on the Pacific Coast, right outside of Santa Barbara, our rainbow myth? It's a Chumash Indian myth, and it's that the Chumash, native Chumash here on the California coast lived on the islands off of California, and they were transported to the mainland on a rainbow. And those who fell off the rainbow became dolphins.
my God, that's
Isn't
incredible.
that gorgeous?
Because maybe this is the missing bit in my musical. No, I've written all the songs mainly. Can you see these flies? I hope you can't.
I can, but I'm thinking, oh, they're English flies. They're okay.
I don't know why they've just decided to come and join in. To yeah. Um, no, so yeah, so I got the songs. I actually really did want to put those out next. This is the next album, so I think that's probably going to be the plan.
Well, I
It's
hope I
always
gave
hard.
you a little something about rainbows. I was devastated with joy and awe
Mm,
when I heard that story. I mean, the natives, you know what I mean? The first humans, if
mm.
you will, the Native Americans in my case, really knew how to be in harmony with their
I think
planet.
that's the biggest joke is the way we were brought up, certainly at school. To hear about how the ancients were all completely primitive, and
Yes,
and
yeah,
actually, I don't think we could be much more primitive than we are right now.
yes,
Um,
exactly right.
a few hundred years time, looking back at the fact people actually drop lumps of metal on people and bomb them
Mm.
um, from the sky is the most primitive thing you could ever imagine, isn't it? So
Of course, once upon a
um,
time they poured boiling oil out of castle towers. So we have a
and
problem. There's some lizard brain thing going on. We have to get rid of that ancient.
need a bit of harmonizing. Need a bit of
What
harmonizing.
what have I? We've got to wind it down. What have I forgotten to ask you? What do you want to project to me about this wonderful CD about your life, your future, the whole damn thing?
I think one of the messages I'd like to put out is I feel that um, music should be for everybody. And I think it's just so important. Excuse me. And I read some of Plato's Republic, Ideal Republic. Sadly, the person whose book I borrowed wanted it back, and I haven't finished it. But I mean, anyway, it's a long story. Um, yeah, but I thought it was very interesting when they were going through the requirements for a leadership, and it's extraordinary. It's not really, if you think about it. It's sort of one of the things was being a musician and a philosopher and a mathematician, but I mean it certainly wasn't who's got the most money to lead.
Hmm.
I've always thought the old myth, the story of the old wise tribal leader or whoever would be able to guide in that way about leadership. And I don't know, that seems to have gone right out of the window at the moment, doesn't it?
Well, at the
Is that,
moment, you have the same problem we have you in Britain and we in the U.S. Two clowns. Am I in trouble?
well,
Am I in trouble yet?
no, I don't really know what to say. I think the problem is none of us really know what's really going on. I mean,
Yeah.
because I'm still a person, I like to get to the bottom of something and hear all the information before I say have a verdict on what I feel. But it's just so been all over the place that it's all very strange. Yeah.
Now we're going to end, but I'm an Aquarian,
Mm.
Virgo rising, and I don't take any of this terribly seriously, and I do. There's some sort of long chain of whatever anecdotes that
Yeah.
have to do with somehow how come I'm an Aquarian. But we're entering the age of Aquarius, remember?
Yeah.
And I'm quite confident that these troubles are the last burst of this kind of horrible human being. I'm certain of it. I may be dead before we get to the total planet full of good people, but see what I mean? I'm an optimist also, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm glad to say that going back to my father, it seems apt to go back to him because we started with him basically, didn't we?
Yeah.
But he was very troubled by all the problems in the world. Like, he was hugely troubled by it. But by the end of his life, he said to me, Helen, we need to lighten up. And he said, no, because you can't just keep on dwelling. That's why being optimistic. It also helps all of the energies around you. If you're, the type of person who says, goes up, you can see someone talk to someone else and they say, oh, you're looking terrible. Are you okay? Are you not feeling too good? And you see the person kind of go, whew, it's just very important to be optimistic and say, if someone says that, no, actually, you look fine. I mean, obviously not if they look like they're dying or something, but generally speaking, I think that it can tip you one way or the other.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And people look at me as a so-called critic with John Destai. So, what horrible things are you going to say about? And I've told you earlier in the conversation, I'm serious. Anything creative, at whatever level, is to be praised. Period. That's all there is to it in my life. We must move forward and regain positivity and creativity. It's very, very important. So, Helen Habershon, what a great pleasure it's been talking with you about all this is going to go up on performingartsreview.net with pictures and videos and access to buy the CD, all that good stuff in a bit. I'm going to try and get our interview up soon, the next day or so, because people come and browse, so they'll want to browse your page, watch the interview, and then later when I finally get caught up on written reviews, that'll go up. We'll send out a whole nother punch out to the public. So it's good. It's all good. Many thanks for the conversation. Let me just run it by once more. This is a Divine Art release, 2019, brand new, hot off the press. I think I saw it, wrote to you, and you wrote right back. It was lovely. The CD is called Found in Winter. Beautiful music. You are in the tradition of your countrymen. You write gorgeous tunes.
Thank you so much, Dan. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Lots of fun. See you then. Bye-bye.